Now I am coming to the next part of my lecture, that is string buffer. I have already introduced this string buffer class few slides ago when I mentioned about the mutable string and immutable string. The string class is basically a immutable string. What is the meaning of this immutable string? The meaning of this immutable string is we cannot modify it. If I want to modify it, we can call different functions that I already discussed with you, but the result must be stored in different object. Inside the same object, we cannot modify it. That is the point for the case of string class, because it is immutable. But string buffer is a peer class of string that provides much of the functionality of strings. String represents fixed length, immutable character sequence. In contrast, string buffer represents growable and writable character sequence. Note this point, it's very important. String represents fixed length, immutable character sequence. In contrast, string buffer represents a growable and writable character sequence. String buffer may have characters and substrings inserted in the middle or appended to the end. That is not feasible for the string class that I already discussed. String buffer will automatically grow to make room for such additions and often has more characters pre-allocated than are actually needed to allow room for growth. So we can insert a substring in the middle, we can append a substring to the end. String buffer allows us, string buffer automatically grows to make room for such additions. This part is not fulfilled in the string class. That is the limitations of the string class. So these are the four constructors of string buffer. First one is the default. Second one, it is taking integer size. I'm explaining all these four in the next slide. Third one, it is taking a string itself. And fourth one, it's taking a character sequence. Fine. First one, it's a default one. Second one, it's taking a size. Third one, taking a string str itself. And fourth one, it's taking a character sequence. So default constructor with no parameter reserves room for 16 characters without reallocation. It's important to know. Note it down. The default constructor reserves room for 16 characters without reallocation. Second version accepts an integer argument that explicitly sets the size of the buffer. Yes. First one, for 16 character memory allocated. For the second one, you are providing the size. That's why buffer size you have already explicitly set. And the third version, which accepts a string argument and sets the initial content of the string buffer object and reserves room for 16 more characters without reallocation. Try to understand the third case. You have passed a string over here as a parameter. What this constructor does, this constructor string buffer does, it allocates the memory, rather it allocates the spaces, rooms for the strings that you have passed, along with 16 more. Along with 16 more. I will show you in an example. And the fourth constructor creates an object that contains a character sequence contained in cats. We have passed a character sequence in cats. Using those cats, it creates, using those cats, it creates an object. Nice. So these are the meaning of these 4 string buffer constructors. Then coming to the next topic, that is the method, length and capacity of string buffer class. Length and capacity of string buffer class. What it does, it basically the current length of string buffer can be found via length method, and the total allocated capacity can be found through capacity method. Both are returning integer. Fine. Try to understand what is the difference between length and capacity. Current length of the string buffer, that means you have already a string in a string buffer. Length actually returns the length of the string. When you are talking about the capacity method, when you are calling the capacity method, this actually returns the allocated capacity of the string buffer object. Next method is ensure capacity. Before going to the ensure capacity, let me explain these 2 methods, length and capacity, with an example. Look, I have called a string buffer method, rather string buffer constructor, with a given string hello, and I just discussed when it creates this object, according to the, it will allocate memory, rather the hello gets copied into the object, along with it will allocate memory or room for 16 more characters. So how many size of the hello is? It is 5. So when I am calling the length method on SB, it will return me 5. When I am calling capacity method on SB, hopefully it will return 21, because 5 plus 16. That is the difference between length and capacity. Executing the program, and let me show you the output. Look, your buffer is the object. Your buffer is basically printing the object SB, that is hello string object, string buffer object. The length of this is hello length is 5, is already set, and along with this hello, it allocates memory for 16 more characters. So that's why the capacity function returns 21. Hope this much is clear to you. Moving back to the slide. One more method is ensure capacity. If you want to pre-allocate room for a certain number of characters after a string buffer has been created, you can use ensure capacity to set the size of the buffer. This is useful if you know in advance that you will be appending a large number of small strings to a string buffer. Ensure capacity has its general form void ensure capacity end capacity. So you must have to provide the size of the buffer. Definitely we can use this method if we already know that we need to append large number of small strings of the existing string buffer object into a existing string buffer object. Then we call the ensure capacity method, and as a parameter what we have to pass, we have to pass the capacity, rather the size of the buffer that we actually want to set by calling this method ensure capacity. Next method is the set length. To set the length of the buffer within a string buffer object, we normally use this method set length, passing a length value as a parameter, and that value must be non-negative. Fine. When we increase the size of buffer, null character added to the end of existing buffer. And if the set length is called a value, set length is called on a string buffer object with a value that is less than the current value returned by length, then the character stored beyond the new length will be get lost. Try to understand. We have already a string buffer object, right? I am calling the set length method on that string buffer object. What is the purpose of this? To increase the size of the buffer. And when the size gets increased, the null characters are added to the end of the existing buffer. But if you passed a length which is less than the existing string length, then what will happen? If you call set length method with a value that is less than the current value returned by the length returns the length of the string. So less than the current value returned by the length, then the character stored beyond the new length will be get lost. So what happens actually? Actually the size, the length of the string buffer object gets decreased. So that's why automatically some characters get lost. More functions. Caret and set caret. All are the functions I am talking about. These are defined in under the string buffer class. What is caret function? Caret function basically used to extract a character from a given string buffer object, and it takes an integer parameter, right? It takes an integer parameter. As in the string class also we have seen the caret method, and it basically takes an integer parameter that is the index of that index we are passing as a parameter to the caret function. So for caret, where is the name of the parameter, where specifies the index of character being obtained, fine. And what is the purpose of this set caret? We are just replacing any character by the second passed value. At particular index, we are basically setting a character by the second parameter. That is the purpose of the set caret. Set caret, where it specifies the index of character being set, and the ch specifies the new value of that character. That means if we pass int where index 2, say I am passing a character z. So in a given string, that is the object of a string buffer class, in a given string, we are just setting the index 2 value as z. That is the purpose of caret. And for both methods, the value of where must be non-negative, definitely, and must not specify a location beyond the end of the buffer. Otherwise, it will give exceptions. So keep it in mind when we will pass this value as a parameter to set caret function. So let me give you more examples regarding this caret function and the set length that I just discussed. Look, caret function is basically returning the character of at particular index. So here my string is hello, When I am calling caret function at index 1, definitely e will be returned. Fine. Set caret at index 1, the value will be I. So what is your index 1? HE is the index 1. So E will be replaced by character I. That is the function of set caret. Set length 2. Original length how much? 5. So that I already mentioned in the slide. If you declared a size in a set length method which is less than the already existing string size. Yes, here I pass 2. Already string size allotted to the string buffer object SB is 5. So definitely the rest of the characters after length 2 will be get lost. So buffer after SB becomes what? SB becomes HI only because I replaced E with I. So HI. This line will give you, let me execute the program first. SB dot first line give you hello. Second line caret 1 will give us E. Third line I replace it. Fourth line I have minimized the size. So that's why 5 comes to 2. When I print SB, so only HI prints. Rest of the characters get lost. Again, I am calling caret function or SB. Definitely gives the index 1 value, and that is 1. That is I. So hopefully this functions caret, function set caret, function set length is clear to you. Fine. Moving to the slide. So caret, set caret, that is clear to us. Yes, get caret function, it is bit similar to the string functions that I already discussed. It is basically returning a set of characters. Definitely a target character array must you have to provide. Source start. The today's lecture, the first slide I discussed get caret function for string class. This is for the string buffer class. Almost same. Source start, source end. Source start specifies the index of beginning of the substring. Source end specifies an index that is one past end of the desired substring. That means the substring contains the cats from source start through source end minus 1. That is same for the get cats method of the string class. Next parameter is the array that will receive the characters is specified by target. That is the parameter number 3. And the fourth parameter is the index within target at which the substring will be copied is passed as target start. Care must be taken to assure that the target array is large enough to hold the number of characters in specified substring. So get cards is basically returning a substring depending upon the values source start, source end. Target is nothing but the target array where the substring resides, and the target start is basically the starting index of the target array where the copy operation will start, from where the copy operation of the substring gets started. Hopefully this is clear to you. Next method is the append. Append method concatenates string representation of any other type of data to the end of the invoking string buffer object. It has several overloaded versions. So to append it, what we have to do? StringBuffer, we have to call this append method, and again I am coming back to the function that is value of. Definitely when I am appending an object of an object class with a string buffer, definitely this string dot value of gets called. String dot value of gets called to obtain its string representation that we already discussed. That value of method returns a human readable format. It returns a string. So first it will return a string, and then this append function append that particular string with invoking string buffer object. So implicitly this work is done in the backend. Fine. So that's why what is the function of an append method? It just basically concatenates the string representation of any other type of data. So any other type of data cannot directly append it with a string. Definitely the string dot value of method will be invoked in the backend. So first convert it as a string, then append method will do the task. The rest of the task is basically appending, invoking string and the parameter string, both. Hopefully clear. Next method is insert. Insert method is basically inserting one string into another. Fine. String buffer, this is the method of a string buffer class. The insert method insert one string into another. It is overloaded to accept values of all the simple type plus strings, object, character sequences. Like append, it calls string dot value of to obtain the string representation of the value. It is called with, and the string is then inserted into the invoking string buffer object. So what we are doing here, we are basically inserting a string into an existing string buffer object. But the point that needs to be noted here, int index is basically first parameter of this method is basically tells us at which point, rather at which index the new string gets inserted. That's clear to us. Index specifies the index at which point the string will be inserted into the invoking string buffer object. It's very clear to us. Now question coming for the second part, because second part that we are passing as a parameter is not always a character or not always a string. Sometimes it is an object of an another class, rather an object of an object class. So it is not at all a string. So again we are taking consideration this line. It calls string dot value of to obtain the string representation of its value. It again calls string dot value of to obtain the string representations of the value. So then each and everything gets converted to string by calling this method value of, then that string gets inserted into the invoking string buffer object. I hope you understood. That is the insert method. Fine. This is the string buffer, returns a string buffer object. Returns a string buffer object. Get signed. So let me just a minute. Again, I'm sharing it with you. Replace method. It is basically replacing one set of characters. It is basically replacing one set of characters with another set inside a string buffer object by calling replace method. It replaces one set of characters with another set inside a string buffer object by calling its replace method. It's very simple. Replace method is basically passing the start index, end index, string str, that is the replace string. So it will replace from start index to end index minus 1 with the value str. So the substring being replaced is specified by the index is start index and end index, and thus the substring at start index through end index minus 1 is gets replaced, and the replacement string is passed in the str. Replacement string is passed as a third parameter, so it will basically replace start index to end index, and the resulting string buffer object is returned. That is the function of replace method. So it is basically replacing a substring of a string buffer object. Substring, to obtain a substring from a string buffer object, we need to call substring method. It is overloaded method. Fine. First method is taking only one parameter, that is start index, and second taking two parameters, one is start index, another is end index, and it returns the substring from where to where, again the start index to end index minus 1. This is the point needs to be noted. So the first form returns the substring that starts from the start index and runs to the end of invoking string buffer object. Yes, for the first case, it starts from given this index and it ends up to last of the string buffer object. But in the second case, it form returns the substring. Second form returns the substring that starts with start index, runs through the end index minus 1 up to end index minus 1. I hope this is clear to you how substring method works. So I discussed replace method, we discussed substring method. These are the defined method of string buffer class. Reverse method. Reverse method, it just gets the reverse. To get the reverse of a string buffer object, you have to call the reverse method. So reverse the characters within a string buffer object, you have to call the reverse method. This method returns the reverse object on which it was called. Next method, delete. What this delete method does, delete method delete the characters within a string buffer by using a particular range. When you are specifying start index and end index, when you are specifying start index and end index, that means it is deleting a set of characters range from start index to end index minus 1. And when you are specifying only location, that is the second case, when you are specifying only location, it basically deletes a particular character from that particular location to from that particular location. So delete method deletes a sequence of characters from the invoking object. Start index specifies the index of the first character to remove, and the end index specifies an index one past the last character to remove. Thus the substring deleted runs from start index to end index minus 1, and the resulting string buffer object is returned. That is the first case. And the delete caret method, this one is delete. Second one is delete caret. When you are calling delete caret method, that deletes the character at particular specified index. That index I have passed in this case as LOC, lock, and it returns the resulting string buffer object. Fine. I hope this much is clear to you. This is few functions I discussed from the string buffer class. Similarly, a few functions I have discussed about the string from the string class. Many more functions are there. You may uh, consult with different websites regarding all the other the string functions and string buffer functions. We are discussing few of them. Those are very much important for us. Normally we use. So I hope this much is clear to you. Before concluding my session, I'm showing you more examples that I discussed so far. Some programming examples which are left. Let me share the programming screen once again. So this much I have discussed, which is caret and set length. Coming to the next program, this is for the reverse. Just I'm talking about. So this is ABCDE. There's a string buffer object. When I'm calling reverse on it, the reverse string reside in the same object as. That is the difference between string and string buffer. It is mutable. So if we modify it, it remains same. It resides in the same location. Not remains same. It resides in the same location. So reverse string also is in the S. So execute the program. This will give you FEDCBA. Look the output. This is my original string, and this will give us FEDCBA. Hope reverse function is clear to you. Next, this is the delete function. Just we discussed delete functions and delete caret functions. It basically returns a substring deleted from character 4 to 6. So this is the test is the original string. Where is 4? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is this space. 5, 6. So up to this space gets deleted, is get deleted. So these are test will be the output after deletion. And when you are deleting caret 0, so that means t gets removed. Let me check the output. Look, first case is get deleted, and the second case t get deleted because I've called the function delete caret. But all these things I'm doing inside the same object, inside the same stream buffer object as b. That is the point needs to be noted for this case. That is the limitations in the string class that we overcome over here. Next example, this is the delete functions and delete caret functions. Hopefully this much is clear to you. Next function, it is replace. Discussed. Replace function is basically replacing a character sequence or a set of characters of SB from 5 to 6. So which one is 5? This is because start index up to end index minus 1. So 5 to 6. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So is get replaced by was. Your 5 index is I. Definitely 6 index is S. So is gets replaced. Your start index is 5. End index is 6. Because you passed 7. That's why that means you have the function will replace 5 to 6. 5 to 6 resides actually is. So is get replaced by was, and if you execute the program, the output will be this was a test. Yes, the output will be this was a test. Is get replaced by was. And the last example for today's class. This I haven't discussed about in the presentation, but this functions is also exist in the string buffer class, that is index of and last index of. We already discussed these two functions in string class. That is the first occurrence of the string and the last occurrence of the string. Look, index of 1. When I'm writing index of 1, the first occurrence of the string is 0. When I'm talking about last index of 1, that means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 will be the answer. So if I execute the program, first answer will be 0 and second answer will be 8. Let me check. Look, the output comes first index it is 0 and the last index is 8, because this is the first occurrence of this string it returns, and this is the last occurrence of this string is 1. The string input string is 1. We are checking the first and last occurrence of 1 in the given string buffer object sp. So I hope this much is clear to you. Thank you all for your patience. If you have any doubt, you may send mail to my mail ID. Thank you one. Thank you all. So I'm concluding my session here.